Welcome to Stories Junction. Let's begin today's story. I never saw it coming. Samantha and I had been together for nearly a decade. 9 years of shared memories, late-night talks, quiet mornings, inside jokes, and all the little things that made a life together feel like home. We met in college, two broke students surviving on instant noodles and cheap coffee, dreaming of a future that felt just out of reach. Over time, we built something real. Through job struggles, through financial burdens, through promotions and setbacks, through the loss of loved ones and the celebrations of life's small victories. We had history, real history. I wasn't naive. I knew love changed over time. It wasn't always passion and butterflies. It wasn't always grand gestures and whispered, "I love yous" in the dark. Some days were just ordinary. Some weeks felt routine. But I never doubted us. I never doubted that at the end of the day, we would always be on the same team. Then one evening, with a single sentence, Samantha shattered that belief. We were sitting at the dinner table, the low hum of the television in the background, the soft clinking of silverware against ceramic plates filling the silence. I had made chicken Alfredo, her favorite. It was one of the first meals I learned to cook when we moved in together. Back then, she used to sit on the counter, stealing bites of pasta before it was ready, laughing when I smacked her hand away with a wooden spoon. Tonight, she barely touched it. At first, I assumed she'd had a rough day at work. Maybe her boss had been riding her too hard again, or maybe she was just exhausted. But there was something different in her posture, in the way she twisted her fork through the noodles without taking a bite. She looked distant, lost, like she wasn't even in the room with me. I set my glass down and watched her carefully. "Sam, you okay?" She let out a slow, measured breath, her shoulders rising and falling in a way that felt deliberate, like she was bracing herself. Then, without even looking at me, she said the words that made my stomach drop. "Daniel, I need some space." For a moment, the room went completely silent. The words felt foreign, like I had misheard her, like they didn't belong in our home, at our dinner table, in our marriage. I set my fork down and leaned forward slightly. "Space." She nodded but still didn't meet my eyes. "Yeah, I feel like I need some independence. Time to figure things out for myself." Independence. The word rolled around in my head, and I struggled to grasp its meaning in the context of our relationship. She had never been the type to feel trapped. We weren't in some suffocating, controlling marriage where I monitored her every move. She had always done what she wanted: girls' trips with her friends, late nights at work, weekends spent at yoga retreats. I had never questioned her, never checked her phone, never asked her for anything but honesty and respect. Independence from what? I asked, my voice steady, but I could hear the sharp edge creeping in. She shrugged, still avoiding my gaze. "I don't know. I just feel stuck." Her tone was eerily flat, like she had rehearsed this moment over and over before finally saying it out loud. There was no emotion behind it. No anger, no sadness, no guilt. Just attachment. I let her words sink in, try to piece them together with the woman I thought I knew. Stuck? That was new. Just weeks ago, we had talked about buying a bigger house, maybe even starting a family someday. She had smiled at the idea. She had reached across the table, taken my hand in hers, and talked about nurseries and weekend road trips with kids in the back seat. Now, suddenly she was stuck? I could have fought for answers. I could have demanded an explanation, pushed back, argued, tried to fix whatever she thought was broken. But I didn't, because deep down, something in my gut told me that this wasn't about space. It wasn't about independence. It was about something else. And so, instead of clinging to her, instead of begging for clarity, instead of fighting for something that was already slipping through my fingers, I did the one thing she never expected. I let go. "All right," I said, leaning back in my chair. She finally looked up. Her fingers tightened around her fork, like she was bracing for a fight. "Wait, what? You want space? You got it." She blinked, clearly thrown off by how easily I accepted it. I could see in her expression she had expected resistance, maybe even anger. Maybe she had wanted me to beg, to plead, to make her feel wanted, to prove to her that she was still the center of my world. But I wasn't going to play that game. And in that moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes, something she wasn't ready to admit. Doubt. Maybe she thought she could ask for space and still keep me waiting. Maybe she thought I would remain a constant in the background, a safety net, someone she could return to when she was done figuring things out. She had no idea how wrong she was. At first, Samantha seemed almost relieved. She had asked for space, and I gave it to her. I didn't question it, didn't fight it, didn't beg her to stay. If she was expecting an argument or some grand plea to hold our marriage together, she was left waiting in silence. And so, with the weight of my resistance gone, she started changing. It was gradual at first, small things that I might not have noticed if I wasn't paying attention. She started going out more, coming home later than usual. She'd mention dinner with coworkers, but never specify which ones. She'd leave for the gym, but come back with perfect makeup and hair that looked untouched by sweat. Then there was her phone. Before, it had always been an afterthought. She used to leave it lying around, face up on the kitchen counter or the coffee table, forgotten under a pile of unopened mail. She had never cared about notifications, never jumped to respond the second a message came in. But now it was always in her hand, always buzzing, always turned away from my line of sight. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she really did just need space. Maybe she was going through something personal. Maybe work had been draining her, and she was trying to find herself again. But deep down, I knew. I knew because when someone you love starts slipping away, you feel it in your bones before you see it with your eyes. And still, I said nothing. I stopped asking where she was going. I stopped checking in when she came home late. I didn't wait up for her anymore. And the strangest thing was, she barely noticed. For a while, she thought she had won. But the thing about people who crave freedom is that they never expect to feel lost without the person they took for granted. And that's exactly what started to happen. It began as little cracks in her confidence, hesitations where there had once been certainty. One night, she came home past midnight. The old Samantha, the one who used to text me if she was running late, who used to slip into bed quietly so she wouldn't wake me, was gone. This new version of her walked through the front door like she didn't owe anyone an explanation, like she was expecting a fight. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone, completely relaxed. I didn't even look up right away. I could feel her standing there, watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction. Finally, she shifted her weight and crossed her arms. "You're not even going to ask where I was?" I glanced at her, then back at my screen. Nope, that wasn't the response she was expecting. Her eyes narrowed slightly, like she was trying to figure out if I was messing with her. She stood there for a few more seconds, waiting like she was daring me to call her out. When I didn't, she let out a small scoff, rolled her eyes, and turned toward the bedroom. But before she disappeared down the hall, I caught it, that flicker of frustration. She wanted me to react. She needed me to care, but I didn't. And that was the first time she realized something was different. A week later, it got worse. Samantha started texting me more. Not for the usual everyday things. Not for grocery lists or reminders about upcoming plans. No, now she wanted to know where I was. The first time it happened, I was out with a couple of friends. My phone buzzed, and when I checked, I saw her name on the screen. "Where are you?" I stared at the message for a second, then locked my phone and slid it back into my pocket without replying. An hour later, another one came through. "Are you coming home soon?" For months, she had acted like I wasn't even a factor in her life. Now, suddenly, she was checking in on me. It was almost funny. The next evening, I was getting ready to go out again. I had just finished buttoning my shirt when Samantha walked into the bedroom. She leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching me. "Where are you going?" she asked. Her voice was casual, but I could hear the edge underneath. "Out," I said simply, adjusting my watch. Her eyebrows pulled together slightly. "With who?" I smirked as I grabbed my keys. "Why do you care?" She blinked, caught off guard. I didn't think you'd pull away this much." There it was, the realization, the slow unraveling of everything she thought she had under control. She had spent weeks pretending like she didn't care if I was around or not. And now, for the first time, she was feeling what it was like to be on the other side. And she hated it. But here's the thing. I didn't. I was finally free from waiting, from wondering, from caring about someone who had already checked out. She wanted space. Now she had it, and she didn't like it. Samantha got what she wanted. Space. Independence. The freedom to figure things out. For a while, she seemed satisfied with it. Maybe even excited. She spent more time out, stayed later, dressed differently. She stopped telling me where she was going, and I never asked. She thought she was in control. She thought she was winning. But the funny thing about people who push others away is that they always expect them to wait in the background, to stand by, arms open, ready to take them back the second they realize they made a mistake. She assumed I was still there, still hers, just waiting on the sidelines while she indulged in whatever phase she was going through. But I wasn't. And the moment she started to feel that shift, the moment she realized I was truly letting go, was the moment she started to panic. It happened on a Saturday. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Samantha walked in, dressed in jeans and a fitted black sweater, hair curled in loose waves. It was the kind of effort she hadn't put in for me in a long time. She leaned against the counter, watching me, her fingers tapping lightly against the marble surface. "Do you have plans today?" she asked. Her voice was casual, too casual, like she was trying to make it sound like she didn't really care about the answer. I poured my coffee and took a slow sip before replying. "Yeah." She hesitated. "With who?" I smirked. "Why do you ask?" Her jaw tightened slightly. "I'm just curious." I set my mug down. "Curious about what?" "Where I'm going. Who I'm seeing. What I'm doing with my time." She exhaled sharply. "Daniel, don't be like that." You just what?" I interrupted. "Thought you could ask for space and still have me waiting in the background? Thought you could do whatever you wanted without me ever moving on." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "You wanted independence, Samantha." I leaned forward slightly, meeting her eyes. "Now you have it." She looked away, her throat moving as she swallowed. I could see the conflict in her face, the cracks forming in the foundation of whatever illusion she had built for herself. And then, just when I thought she might say something real, she did what she always did. She changed the subject. "Well, if you're not too busy," she said, forcing a small smile, "maybe we could have dinner tonight. Just us." It was the first time she had suggested spending time together in weeks. And it was too late. "I can't," I said simply. She blinked. "You can't, or you don't want to." I picked up my coffee again and took another sip before answering. "Both." She stood there, frozen, as if she hadn't expected that. As if she had truly believed she could come back any time she wanted, snap her fingers, and have me fall back into place. But that wasn't going to happen. Not anymore. From that moment on, I noticed a shift. She started texting me more. "What time will you be home? Are you working late? How was your day?" Little things she hadn't bothered asking me in months. I kept my replies short. If she was trying to pull me back in, she was going to be disappointed. And then it happened. The moment that shattered the illusion completely. Samantha had left her phone on the coffee table while she went into the kitchen. It was a rare thing these days, her phone being unattended, unlocked, left out in the open. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't looking for anything. But as I glanced at the screen, a message popped up. "I miss you. When can I see you again? Asterisk, asterisk." I stared at the words, letting them sink in. There it was. The confirmation of what I had already suspected. She never needed space. She never needed time to figure things out. She had just wanted the freedom to explore someone else without losing the security of what she already had. She wanted a backup plan, a safety net, a husband who would be there when she was done playing her little game. And now, she was realizing she had miscalculated. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't need to, because in that moment, I realized something. I didn't care anymore. Whatever she had done, whoever she had been seeing, it didn't matter. She had already lost me. And now, for the first time, she was the one with something to lose. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one left wondering. It was her. The night I saw that message on her phone, something inside me clicked into place. A final piece of the puzzle. A realization that felt both liberating and strangely indifferent. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even surprised. I was just done. And the moment she realized, that was the moment everything changed. I stopped pretending. No more waiting up for her. No more texting back just to be polite. No more acting like I cared when, deep down, I'd already checked out. And Samantha noticed. At first, she acted like she didn't. She went about her usual routine, going out late, dressing up for someone that wasn't me, locking her phone whenever I walked into the room. But then she started to see it. The shift. She came home one evening, later than usual. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone, barely acknowledging her presence. She hesitated in the doorway, as if expecting something. A question. An argument. Anything. But I just kept scrolling. Finally, she crossed her arms. "You're not even going to ask where I was?" I glanced up briefly, then back at my screen. "Nope." She blinked. "Why not?" I shrugged. "Because I don't care." That hit her. I saw it in the way her expression faltered, just for a second. She let out a small, forced laugh, shaking her head. "Right. Okay." But she wasn't okay. Because the next morning, it started. The calls. The texts. The sudden interest in where I was, what I was doing, who I was seeing. I didn't give her what she wanted, and that only made her want it more. One night, I was getting ready to go out, buttoning up a fresh shirt, adjusting my watch, when Samantha walked into the bedroom. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me. Going somewhere. Yeah. With who? I smirked, grabbing my keys. "Why do you care?" She frowned. "I don't. She exhaled sharply. "I didn't think you'd pull away this much." There it was. The unraveling. She had spent weeks pretending she didn't care, acting like I was just an accessory to her life, something she could pick up and put down whenever she pleased. But now, for the first time, she was feeling what it was like to be on the other side. And she hated it. I didn't. I had never felt more free. And then, the final blow came. Samantha made a mistake. A careless one. She left her phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked, and it lit up with a name I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you again." I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already knew. I had known for weeks, maybe even months, but seeing it there in plain sight just confirmed everything. She had been so careful before, hiding her tracks, keeping her secrets. But now she was getting reckless, because she was losing control, and she knew it. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting. A few minutes later, she walked into the kitchen and reached for her phone. The second she saw the message, I watched her entire body go still. Slowly, she turned to face me. "Daniel." I held up a hand, cutting her off. No explanations. My voice was calm, steady. "I don't want them." Her eyes darted between me and the phone, like she was scrambling for the right words, the right excuse. But for the first time, there wasn't one. She had nothing left to hide behind, because I wasn't playing the game anymore. I grabbed my car keys and walked past her, pausing just briefly in the doorway. "You wanted space, Samantha." I glanced over my shoulder. "Now you're going to get it." And then I left. Not just the house. Not just the conversation. I left us. Completely. The next morning, I didn't waste time. I went straight to a lawyer's office. No hesitation. No second guessing. Just a simple request. Asterisk in this marriage. As quickly as possible. Asterisk. The lawyer was efficient, professional. He asked a few questions, drafted the paperwork, and within an hour, it had begun. By the time I walked out of that office, I had already made up my mind. I wasn't going back, and Samantha was about to find that out the hard way. Samantha didn't see it coming. For weeks, she had convinced herself that she was in control, that she could have everything, her freedom, her new life, and the security of knowing I would always be there, waiting in the background. She was wrong. The morning she got served with the divorce papers, my phone started blowing up. Calls, texts, voicemails filled with a frantic desperation I had never heard from her before. At first, I ignored them. But after the 10th call in an hour, I finally picked up. The moment the line connected, her voice came through, breathless and panicked. "Daniel, what the hell is this?" I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. "It's a divorce, Samantha." Thought that was pretty obvious. Her breath hitched. "You're serious?" Completely. Silence. Then a quieter voice. "Can we just talk about this?" I almost laughed. Talk. Now. She had every opportunity to talk before she started pulling away, before she started hiding things. before she lied to my face and made me feel like I was the one who was holding her back. I exhaled. There's nothing to talk about. Her voice wavered. Daniel, please. I cut her off. Don't, because I knew what was coming next. Excuses. Regrets. A desperate attempt to fix something that had been broken for months. I wasn't interested. This is what you wanted, I said, my tone even. You wanted space. Independence. You got it. That's not. She inhaled sharply. I made a mistake. I let out a dry chuckle. Yeah, I know. More silence. Then, in the smallest voice, I didn't think you'd actually leave. And there it was. The truth she had never admitted out loud. She thought I would always be there, waiting, holding on, fighting for something that no longer existed. But the difference between us was simple. I didn't beg for people to stay. If someone wanted to walk away, I let them. And that's exactly what I did. I checked into a hotel that evening, packed a bag, and left the house without a second thought. It wasn't bittersweet. It wasn't painful. It was freeing. Samantha, on the other hand, wasn't handling it so well. The texts kept coming. First, she was angry. You're really going to throw away everything we built? Then she was guilty. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Then she was desperate. Please come home. We can fix this, asterisk asterisk. I didn't reply. She would figure it out soon enough. A few days later, I got a message from my lawyer. She signed the papers. Just like that, it was over. Months passed. I moved into a new place, started a new job, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself. No more waiting around for someone who had already checked out. No more trying to hold on to something that was already gone. I was free. And then one evening, I ran into her. It was in the grocery store. One of those casual, unplanned moments where the past suddenly collides with the present. She looked different. Not bad, just worn. Like someone who had spent too much time chasing something that never really existed. She saw me first and hesitated, as if debating whether or not to walk over. Then finally she did. Daniel, she said, offering a small, uncertain smile. I nodded. Samantha. Her eyes flicked over me, taking in the way I looked, the way I carry myself. You look good. Thanks. I didn't return the compliment. She shifted uncomfortably, then let out a breath. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what exactly? She swallowed hard. For everything. For taking you for granted. For making the biggest mistake of my life. She hesitated before adding, it didn't work out with him. I almost laughed. Of course it didn't. She took a deep breath. I don't expect you to forgive me, but maybe we could try again. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I shook my head. No, Samantha. We can't. Her face fell. Daniel, please. I cut her off. You lost me, and there's no coming back from that. Her shoulders slumped. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. Instead, she just nodded, blinking back tears. I get it. I gave her one last look, then turned and walked away. And as I left the store, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. I just felt free.